Hey folks, welcome to another video. Today I want to talk about the importance of being very mindful of your social circle and the people and the things that you constantly surround yourself with. You know, it's quite evident that people who think and act alike tend to want to associate with each other. And this is the case whether you're looking at the top 1 to 2 or 5% of the population that pretty much controls all the wealth in the world, to the 95+% of the population that is kind of a slave to the system, so to speak, or is in the red race, basically scrapping for whatever that's left. Yet despite that, people fail to see that the reason why you either fit in either one of these circles or either one of these groups of people pretty much comes down to the people that you surround yourself with and the environment that you're constantly exposing your mind to. So today's video is all about exploring this topic and how taking care of one's social circle by changing and upgrading it can result in an overall improvement in one's life. My life is no different. I've often told people when I go out and speak, especially to young people at schools, or when I go out to whatever gatherings where there are young people around, I often tell them that at one point in my life, this was before I turned 15, I was in a very different place. And I was the kind of kid that was quite lost, confused. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I simply didn't have a sense of purpose or direction in my life. And the reason why I was in such a bad place was because I was constantly around the wrong kinds of people. They led me down the wrong kind of path, and it led me down doing the wrong kinds of things, being involved in distractions that were only destructive to me, and also the kind of environment I kept putting myself in. But it wasn't until I realized that these people that I'm hanging around with and this environment that I'm constantly associating myself with isn't good for me. It's not beneficial to me in the long run. And if I continue to maintain the same relationships, then my life's not going to change that much. And in a few years' time, I'm going to be in serious trouble. And I'll definitely end up just like the kinds of people I don't want to be like that I see on the streets. So I had to make a decision. Either I continue to maintain the same relationships, or I look at upgrading my relationships, getting away from those types of people that I was hanging around that just weren't good for me, and focusing on putting myself in a better environment and surrounding myself with people that will help to develop me into a better person. And it wasn't until I made that decision that things started to click for me and everything started to change for me. It's like suddenly the new energy of this highly intelligent and sophisticated and highly aware and conscious individuals that I was becoming accustomed to, their energy, this new type of energy, started influencing mine. And so I was basically tuning my energy to match theirs. And so I was basically living that low energy state that I was at, and I was slowly increasing my vibrational state to not match theirs. And so by simply being involved in that act of surrounding myself with the right kinds of people, it automatically started forcing my mind, essentially, or started tuning my mind, to put it better, to now starting to think like those people, to now starting to be curious like they were, to now starting to be attracted to the same kinds of things they were attracted to. So a couple of months later of me just being around the right kinds of people and by exposing my mind to the right kinds of things, I suddenly started to think differently. In fact, I started to think like those people that I was surrounding myself with. I started to act like them. I started to be attracted to the things they were attracted to. So it won't take long before your energy starts to rearrange itself to now match the kind of people you're constantly around. And so this is why I don't hang out in the streets. This is why I don't hang out with people who drink, smoke, chew, party, people who live very erratic lives and make very erratic decisions, people who are irrational. I don't hang around with those kinds of people. Why? Because if I'm around them, I know that pretty soon I'm going to be just like them. And so if you're hanging around with friends on the streets, it's a sure sign to someone like me exactly where you're headed. And I would encourage you to please take another route, to not surround yourself with people like that, because you're only doing yourself a huge disservice. So having shared that sort of transition that I made from being confused and being at a place where I just didn't know what I wanted to do, and how by making that shift and starting to surround myself with the right kinds of people and things, my life started to improve. And so by giving you that brief example from my own personal experience, there are 2 factors in there that I've just mentioned that work together to affect your chances of success, or lack thereof. The first one is, of course, your environment, and the second one is your social circle. Now let's look at those 2 factors more closely. When it comes to your environment, let's talk about that first. This is something that you either have control over or you don't have control over. But either way, you still have the ability to be able to isolate your mind from whatever environment you find yourself in. And you usually do that if you're not in a very good environment. You try to find some kind of way to create some field around you that kind of blocks all the negative stuff in that environment. So I'll give you an example. A lot of you will know me because I won a couple of awards and became sort of known internationally, etc. But not many people know that apart from what I've shared in one of my videos on the channel, I was still living in the settlement when I won all those awards and all those accolades. Now, if you're someone who've experienced what it's like to live in a settlement here in Papua New Guinea, you'll know that it's a very, 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 very bad environment for any child to grow up in, and also for any young person to be raised in, because there's just so many distractive and destructive things that go on there. And many of the young people that live in these settlements end up on the streets. They end up getting into drugs, into alcohol. They end up having unwanted relationships that lead on to unwanted pregnancies for a lot of females. You witness a lot of abuse going on there. So it's not a conducive environment for children to be raised in. But I didn't have a choice. That was the reality that we had to deal with. We had invested all our money into our first big project, and we were simply out of money. And the only place that we could go and stay was at that settlement. So I had to learn to work with that environment. I didn't have much choice. I couldn't complain. I couldn't change the environment. But despite that, I still knew that I still had control over one thing, and that was my mind. And that taught me that I can be in the worst possible environment, but if my perception about it is different, if I create this protective layer of field around me that basically shields me from the distractions out there and helps me to focus on what's important, if I can do that, then I can get my mind to focus on the right things. Even if I open my door and I walk out and I see people my age drinking, or people my age engaging in stuff they shouldn't be doing. And so despite seeing all these distractions all the time, I didn't allow them to dictate how my life was going to turn out to be, because I was very cognizant, I was very aware of the environment I was living in and the different factors and elements and things going on in there. And I made up my mind. I was very certain that, look, I don't need to be very intelligent. I just need to be very observant. And if I look at all the actions, all the things that all these people are being involved in, and I assess how their lives are as a result of them being involved in those activities, then I can tell whether what they're doing is resulting in them having a good life, or what they're doing is resulting in them essentially destroying themselves. And the obvious answer was that they were doing things that were only destroying their lives. And I said, I do not want to be like them. And so if I didn't want to be like that, I had to do the opposite of what they were doing. I had to sit down in my house. I had to study. I had to read. I had to meditate. I had to use my mind to equip myself with the right skills, knowledge, expertise, so that I could have the tools necessary to be able to create opportunities for myself beyond this environment that I found myself in. And that's an important lesson that I want you to take from this video, is that your environment doesn't have to dictate the kind of person you're going to turn out to be. The only people that let that happen are people who accept it. And you can complain and you can give all kinds of reasons as to why your life is a certain way. But the moment you become an adult, the moment you have independence of thought, that's the moment you're the only person who's accountable for where your life is today and where it's going to end up in a few years' time, and certainly down into the future. So I had to look at my life and I had to tell myself that yes, I'm in an unfortunate situation here. I'm not in an environment that's conducive for me to develop and grow as a young person, but I don't have any control over it. But what I will do is I will make sure that my mind is focused on the right things. So I took charge of my mind, and I didn't allow the circumstances of our situation to drag me down, or for me to feel like I'm a victim to the circumstances happening around me. And so I also want you to remember the same thing, that there is no excuse, there is no reason whatsoever under the sun. And you can't pick yourself out of whatever rut you find yourself in, whatever hole you find yourself stuck in. And you can climb out of it. And the onus is on you. You owe it to yourself to do it, because no one else is going to do it. So that's with your environment. Now let's move on to your social circle, the second factor that has a huge impact on whether you're able to succeed or not. Now, your social circle is pretty much within your control. You may not be able to control your environment, but you certainly can control who you surround yourself with, and also what you surround yourself with. Because when I refer to who, obviously I'm referring to people that you surround yourself with. So your friends, your family members, your colleagues, or people you see around school, etc. So that's regarding the who you surround yourself with. In terms of the what you surround yourself with, I'm referring to things like books you're reading, music you're listening to, videos or movies that you watch. These are all things that can affect your mind and subsequently can affect your life. So you have to be very mindful of who you're surrounding yourself with and what you're surrounding yourself with, or what you're feeding your mind with, to be exact. So the only question you need to ask yourself when it comes to whether you're around the right social circle or not is this. Ask yourself, are the people I'm hanging around with doing things or at a certain point in their life where I would like to be? Are they succeeding in the things that I want to succeed in? Are they pursuing things that I would want to pursue? Are they living lives that I would want to live, that I aspire to? And if the answer is no, well, it pretty much tells you all there is to know, which is you need to stay away from those people. But if you're around the right kinds of people, people you look up to, people who have built wonderful lives, people who are committed, people who are honest, people who are hardworking, people who have really climbed the ladder in whatever field of work or career that they've pursued in their lives. If you're around people like that, or people in terms of young people that I'm speaking to particularly, your peers would be in school or would have just finished university and would now be starting their careers. So look at the people that are kind of succeeding in the areas that you want to succeed in. So if they're high performers in school, if they're very good leaders in school, if they're eloquent, if they're sharp in their thinking, if they're very good communicators and collaborators, identify those people. And if you aspire to be like them, surround yourself with those kinds of people. Now, if you're out in the workforce, look at people that are high performing, high productive individuals and people who are quickly climbing the ladder in their careers. Surround yourself with those kinds of people. Now, of course, as usual, when you're around people that you're not at the same level with, that you're not on par with, energetically, mentally, etc., it's going to feel very awkward in the beginning. But you're having to cross that river of change where your energy is being fine-tuned to now match the frequency of those individuals. So it will take some time. And the best way to do it is you may not be able, like physically, you may not be able to go and meet those people. What you do is you look at people who are in sort of the same kind of circle as these individuals are, and you find if they've written books or audiobooks or podcasts or speeches or presentations or talks that they've given. A good example would be, even though I couldn't meet a lot of the spiritual mentors that helped to expand my consciousness in the beginning when I started on my spiritual journey at the age of 14 and 15, I learned a lot from the plethora of work that they produced. So I read their books. I watched a lot of their talks and presentations. I listened to their audiobooks and podcasts. And essentially I filled my mind with their teachings, with their way of thinking, with a lot of the knowledge and information and wisdom they were trying to impart to people. And after a few months of doing that, I started to think very differently. So you can do that as well. You may not be able to meet some people that you look up to and aspire to be like, but search whatever work that they've produced and try to listen to what they've talked about or read a lot of the stuff that they've written about. Whatever you can get your hands on, try to do that. So I didn't want this video to be any of the long form ones I've done, so I tried to keep this one sort of short and simple and succinct and to the point. And so I'll summarize by saying that I know that a lot of people are amazed with the things that I've been able to do and what I'm able to accomplish, but I'll honestly tell you while watching that I'm no genius. I'm not some person who's got a special gene that gives me an advantage of other people. No, I just work hard. I just isolate myself. I just focus on the right things. I stay away from distractions that I know are going to destroy my life. And I put my head down and I work towards my goals. Because those are the things that I care about. I want to be able to have a better life for myself. I don't want to end up like a lot of my family members and friends that I see on the streets. I don't want to have a life like them. And I made up my mind that in order for me to not end up where they are, I've got to make certain choices. And the most important ones come down to who I surround myself with, what my social circle is, and what I'm constantly exposing myself to. I have to be very, very mindful of that. So if I'm able to do that and get to where I am today, then you can implement the same formula that I've used to also accomplish phenomenal success for yourself. Success is not bestowed upon the gifted or the specially anointed ones. No, God's given us equal abilities, equal potential for greatness, but it's what we do with it at the end of the day that determines where we end up in life. And the sooner you take responsibility for your life, and the sooner you realize that, am I in the right environment? Am I surrounded by the right kinds of people? The sooner you realize those things, the sooner you're able to determine where your attention needs to be and what your priorities need to be. So I hope you've got some valuable tips from this video. If you've got anything that you'd love to share with the community, please leave your comments below. But as always, I do appreciate the warm company, and I'll catch you guys later.